Hi, everybody. It's Melody LeBaron here with another Agents of Transformation interview, this time with one of my very best friends from high school. So we emerged into, we graduated out of high school in 1972. I grew up in Hartsdale, New York. The high school was in White Plains. And we were incredibly blessed to go to the school we went to. And it was a it was a newly integrated school. There was some clashes in the beginning. We got a real education in so many things that I think most white kids in America just missed because maybe their school wasn't as as full with a multiracial experience. When I got out to BYU after we graduated that next fall, I was just shocked because I had also worked in Manhattan between high school and college. And I was just shocked that everyone was the same color. It looked like a sea of white faces in polyester, and I knew I didn't belong there. So tell us, give us a little bit of a synopsis of your career, Rebecca.
Well, after I left high school, I wanted to become a therapist. And I went to college with the intention of majoring in psychology. And I had to do an internship as part of my college experience. And when the first night I was answering crisis hotline calls, and this woman called up and just told me the most horrific story and that she wanted to kill herself. And at the end of the call, I thought, oh my gosh, if I had those problems, I would kill myself too. And so here I was, this little naive white girl. And I thought, clearly, I'm way in out of my depth. I have no way of responding to someone who has such serious life issues. So I made a detour and wound up doing a lot of plays in college. And so then I just decided to major in acting and theater, which is actually connected because it's a very social art form and it's about the psychology of people. You have to be able to step inside the character and understand what their thought process is.
Right.
So, so I was an actress for 16 years. I lived in New York City and did off Broadway plays. I did regional theater, a lot of dinner theater. I eventually moved to Chicago for 10 years and did a lot of commercials, and I taught acting. And then I was in my early 30s and I just felt like I wanted a bigger picture. Because I remember I was on this commercial shoot one day and I was saying something like, when my kids drive me crazy, I take Advil. And I thought, is this all I have to say to the world? Is this my life? So that led me to actually going back and getting my master's degree in social work. And then I eventually did become a therapist. And so I spent many years in practice with my husband, also a therapist. And then I was offered the opportunity to become the executive director of a social services agency in my town. And so that was great fun. So I did that the last 7 years of my career. And it was a great integration of my therapy skills, but also my acting skills because I had to do a lot of public speaking. I had to interact with a lot of people in the public. So it was just a real nice ending to my working life. And now I've been enjoying retirement almost 5 years.
Wow. Wow. So I can't recall exactly how long you've been living with this diagnosis, but talk to us about so the reason I've asked Rebecca to talk to us today is because she has been living for a considerable number of years with a diagnosis that most people would be very depressed by, and yet she's so resilient and resourced. And so I asked her, would you be willing to talk to us about what you're doing that is allowing you to live such a joy-filled life? Every time I see Rebecca on Facebook, she has just completed another marathon. So talk to us about all of this.
Well, okay. So almost 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. And it was very ironic because we had a geriatric dog and we had just decided one morning that we needed to put him down because he was suffering and it was past the point. So I was waiting for the vet to call me back to arrange to come to our house that afternoon. And the phone rang. And it turns out it was my gynecologist saying, "Oh, by the way, you have a very aggressive form of cervical cancer." So we were just in shock. And so we turned our dog Charlie's passing, into a party and invited all of our friends over. And Charlie got to eat ice cream, which he loved. And he loved parties. He loved being the center of attention and everyone loving on him. And then we just all kind of cried about my cancer. And it was just, to hear that word. And at that point in my life, I had had one friend die of cancer, but I didn't know people who had cancer. And, my husband and I were just in shock. So basically they said, there was, I think, like a 30% chance I would survive the first 5 years. So I got to year 6, the cancer didn't come back. So, and my doctor said, if this cancer comes back, it's so aggressive, that'll be it. So then in year 7, I started having problems with balance and falling down and just weird stuff. And it turned out it had metastasized to my brain. And I had a tumor right back here. So I got online and started looking at the research on how long you survive with a metastatic tumor in your brain. And it was less than 5%. And kind of tying in my marathon running. So I realized part of my mentality has always been, I was talking to a friend and she was like, "Oh my God, if I saw 5%, I would have just curled up into a ball and just say, that's it, my life is over." And for me, I kind of look at it as, okay, what percentage of the population runs a marathon? Probably less than 5%. How many people are running a marathon in all 50 states? Which I am. I'm going to do my 44th state in September. And I thought, 1%? So if I can be part of that 5%, why can't I be part of the 5% that survives a brain tumor? So you can call that a lot of things. You can call it folly. You can call it denial. But the fact is, it kept me focused on, I'm going to be part of that 5%.
So wait, hold on. Rebecca, before the cervical cancer, so going back 12 years ago, you were still working. You were still the director of the center. Were you running marathons at the time?
Yeah, I started running in 2001. I ran my first marathon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you had started running marathons. And so that was already part of your identity.
Mm-hmm.
And you've always been a healthy person. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, you've always been, you've had a healthy relationship with food, healthy practices with exercise and sleep and all of that. So you decide, I'm going to run. You get the diagnosis of, I have a brain tumor. And I'm assuming they can't operate. Like they operated on the cancer, but they didn't offer you the option of surgery for the brain tumor.
Oh, no. I had brain surgery.
Oh, you did?
Yes. And they were able to remove the tumor. And the morning after the surgery, I felt better than I had in months. And my husband and I got up and walked 4 miles around the hospital wing.
I'm sorry, the morning after the surgery,
Yes.
you
So
walked 4 miles?
immediately felt better. And I just got up and walked. It was like, this is great. So,
Wow. Okay. Um, so so then after the surgery, how long was it before your next marathon?
oh, well, as I recall, right after a surgery like that, you can't just start running again. So I'm guessing it was at least 6 months. I had to, they don't want you like jumping up and down and shaking your brains loose.
Mm-mm. No.
So, so it was a while before I got to start running again.
Wow. And so you've done now, so at the time you made this choice, at the time of the brain tumor diagnosis, you said, okay, I'm going to run a marathon in all 50 states. And how many states had you run marathons in by that time?
Oh, by that time, well, not that many actually, and maybe 6 or 7. And so, my strategy was, because I'd always heard that it was very important to have something to live for. And that can keep you going. So I thought, I've got to have a goal that's going to take me a number of years so that I have something very important to live for. Now, there were other things too, like my relationship with my husband or my son. I wanted to live for them. But I thought, well, this is going to take me at least 10 years. So I'm pretty much guaranteed I've got to live at least that long.
Wow. Well, you racked them up. So if you were at 6 or 7 back then, and that was only 5 years ago, you're at
No,
40.
no, that was almost 12 years ago.
Oh, okay. That
Oh,
was,
wait, so that's when I first got the cancer.
oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so then in 2017 is when it came back.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So you had already started this. I'm going to run in all 50 states before the brain cancer shows up. And it shows up, and you're part of the way through that goal. And so you waited 6 months after the surgery, and then you start running marathons again. So tell us if you can. So if you can just not everyone who's listening here is going to be able physically to start running marathons. But let's say we're facing something difficult, whether it's our own physical challenge or it's a something happening in our family or our neighborhood or the country or the climate. Let's just say that something is distressing. What is going along with the running and the achievement of like finishing these marathons? What's going along with that? I mean, I've seen pictures, so I know friendships are going along with that. You're meeting people on these marathons that you run with again. So I know that
Mm-hmm.
you've got a whole community uh,
Mm-hmm.
cheering you on. Um, so talk to us about that, and then anything else that is concurrent with running these marathons.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, obviously a marathon is 26.2 miles, so it's an endurance race. So you have to be able to endure. Well, the fact is, life is an endurance race. And we're all going to have times where we go, oh my God, I just can't keep going. And every single marathon, I have those moments where I just go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking of? This is the stupidest idea ever. Like, why did I ever think this was a good thing to do? So it teaches you how to endure, and it teaches you not to look too far down the road. Because if you start the race and go, oh my gosh, I have 26 more miles to go, you just freak yourself out and you just go, there's no way I can do that. So what I do is I go, okay, all I have to do is a mile. Anybody can run a mile with some training. So all I have to do is a mile. So I get to a mile and then I go, okay, now all I have to do is a 5K. So that gets me to 3 miles. And then it's like, okay, now I just have to get to a 10K. So I'm just focused on each step along the way. And the key is you can't let your mind start getting out into the future or you'll just get stressed out. And I can't tell you, even before I got cancer, how many times I'd be at work and have a deadline or some really stressful project. And I think to myself, my God, I can run a marathon. If I can run a marathon, I can do this. So it really taught me how to trust my ability to endure and to chink it down into just one step at a time. I can remember I was in a marathon once and it was one of the last miles, and my body was screaming and saying, I can't go on. I just want to stop. I just want to, let's just stop now. And so I said to myself, okay, while your mind is having that thought, just put your foot in front of the other foot, and then the other foot, and then the other foot, and just keep going. So, in a way, dealing with any kind of chronic disease or a long hardship that you're facing in your life, it's like that kind of endurance race. And really, the only thing to do to keep yourself from going crazy or just tearing your hair out in despair is to just focus on taking that next step. So it has really forced me to be in the present moment much more and to just go, you know, right now, there's just this moment. What's this moment like? Right now, I'm sitting in my beautiful apartment. My husband is making dinner. It's a great moment. I don't have to think about the next scan that's 3 months away or next week when I go in for treatment. And so it's really forced me to savor just the present moment. And, you know, even when I'm in, you know, sitting in my doctor's office and they're saying the cancer is back, even in those moments, if I go, what about this moment? I'll be like, I'm alive right now. I'm here to, and can hear my doctor saying these words. So right now, all is good. I'm alive. I'm still in the game. So,
Wow.
you know, so I think if anything, you know, I always heard people say, oh, cancer has taught me so much. And I kind of resisted that because I thought, well, that's a little Pollyannish. But in truth, cancer has taught me a lot about just being in the present moment.
Wow. So training your mind
Mm-hmm.
to hold the thought, you're not like resisting or trying to deny or push away the thought, but you're like, okay, that thought can be here. And while that thought is here, I'm going to keep moving. Right. And then you trust your body. Um, one of the, I've never been through the kind of physical challenge that you have been through in the
Mm-hmm.
last 12 years, Rebecca, but I've been through some significant relationship challenges. And
Mm,
one of the devastating effects um, coming out of an abusive relationship, one of the devastating effects is that I no longer trusted myself.
right.
And so I hear you talking about the value of running in this way is the ability to trust your own body. And that would have been such a beautiful place for me to start, to trust my own body.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 So I can see there's so much value. I had some structural problems with my body last year. I had a lot of hip and knee issues, and once I graduated finally from physical therapy, the physical therapist said, one of the reasons you have these problems is that you're not strong enough. Your muscles need to strengthen. And she recommended a particular gym where they have training, not just in personal or fitness training, but in physical therapy as well. And I got on the wait list for 6 months. And so since December, I've been working out. At first once a week, then twice a week starting in January, then 3 times a week starting in May. And it took 8 months. And I'm finally, like, just the joy of being in a fit body. I am just having such a good time. And I was dragging myself to the gym for those appointments or to the online class that I do on Wednesdays. But now I love going because it's now fun. It's now fun because I'm at a certain level of fitness and endurance, and I'm always wanting to beat the last weight or the last rep or the last time, whatever it is I'm doing. And so there's a level of trust and enjoyment that just wasn't there before putting the effort in. So I just want to say that piece about trusting the body, I think, is kind of huge.
It is, it reminds me of after I was first diagnosed with cancer, and I was running a half marathon one day, and I felt so alive in my body. I just felt alive. I felt healthy. I felt whole. I felt connected with the spiritual world, with the trees, and I thought, at this moment, this is what I love. At this moment, I'm not a cancer patient.
Right.
At this moment, I'm just a completely vital and alive being. And it was so joyous to me. And I think that was another thing that it's given me, is just a respite from all the doctor's visits and treatments and what have you. So another thing I wanted to talk about, though, is attitude. And I think I've always considered myself a spiritual person. And by spiritual, I mean primarily having a sense of being part of something bigger than yourself. And I always, when I was seeing clients, I would always kind of ask them, what makes you feel like part of something? And for some people, it was a belief in God. For some people, it was being out in nature. For some people, it was listening to music or being immersed in arts. So it's, for some people, it was being with their community of friends. So, but whenever someone said to me, I just don't feel part of anything, to me, that was one of the key symptoms of depression.
Right.
That it was marked. I mean, I would say almost every person I ever encountered who suffered from clinical depression lacked a sense of being part of something bigger than themselves. And so I think that has been especially important to me going through this. My husband's always teasing me because one of my pet activities is watching cancer videos on YouTube, cancer blogs. And he's like, why do you want to watch about these other people who have cancer? Well, because it always makes me feel less alone. It's like, oh, there's millions of people going through this exact same thing. This isn't something special about me. This is, there are so many people out there, and it always fills me with immense gratitude because I see so many people who are either in chronic pain, which I've never been, or who have had like every possible organ removed from their body that they can in order to live, or they have young children. That's the one that kills me the most, is mothers who have young children and are facing the end of their life, and or children and teenagers having cancer. And so I always feel so blessed. And I think that's a big, I've thought about that, feeling sort of cultivating a sense of gratitude in the world is so important. I was lucky because I had two parents who grew up in the Depression and were dirt poor, and they wound up living a very middle class life. So they were grateful for what they had every single day. So I lived in an environment where gratitude was the norm. And what I've learned, though, because I know some people really struggle with that, having a sense of gratitude. And I always tell them, gratitude is something that can be cultivated. It's like going to the gym and building the strength in your body. I've heard of people doing gratitude practices where every day they sit and think, what am I grateful for today? And I think that that is so important to maintain that, and so important to maintain positive emotions in your life, because there's so much that can give you despair or make you feel powerless or make you feel angry. And to really latch on to those positive emotions that just get your endorphins going, that's key to a sense of well-being. And also using your body as an ally to work with this disease. So gratitude is important. I think compassion is important too, because I used to always say that when I was a therapist, that was my compassion practice. And it was a chance for me to practice compassion with each and every one of my clients. And compassion has to start with being compassionate towards yourself. And I hear people saying things like, what did I do wrong? Why me? Why am I the one with cancer? What's wrong with me? And it's nothing to do with you. I was blessed with, I had a friend who 4 years before I was diagnosed with cancer, she died from cancer. And she was the woman who did everything right. She ate healthy. She was a yoga teacher, did yoga every day. She meditated every day. She had this incredible support system of people who loved her. She had things to live for. She had young daughters at home. She had a loving husband, and then she died. And I just remember at her funeral, everybody was like in shock. They were like, how could this happen? How could this happen to Jennifer? She did everything right. And it was a lesson to me that it's random. It's not about doing anything right or wrong. That very often a chronic disease it's random. And it's not going to help you to ask, why me? That you need to change to how questions. How can I use this? How can I benefit from this? How can I be an inspiration to others? So when they face something like this, they will have something to turn to. So that's important. And I think that maintaining hope, because people have said, well, if you know you're going to die next week and you're on hospice, how can you maintain hope? And I say there's always the opportunity for hope. At first, of course, we all hope that the disease will go away and then I'll be cancer free. And there's still a little part of me that has that hope. But then there's another part of me that, okay, well, if I have to have cancer, may I be symptom free? And, may it not attack any of my organs. But then if I started having symptoms, my hope would be I hope there's medications that can help me tolerate this pain, or I hope I can have a good death, or, or I hope that the remaining days I have to spend with my husband that will be in loving relationships with each other, you know? So there's always something to hope for. And that's also a very positive emotion.
So the way you're speaking of hope does not deny the presence of the illness or the challenge in any way. The way you're speaking of hope is, in the presence of this, I can hope for this. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's a really good point for all of us, because we're not all facing some physical challenge. For those of us who are grieving the state of the nation, the state of the world, for those of us who are grieving what's going on with our climate, you know, I'm friends with a lot of climate scientists who say they have lost hope. And maybe we can reframe that from, we can no longer hope that we can reverse what we could have reversed 20 or 40 years ago. And now, when we look around, what can we hope for? One of the things I can hope for is that I am part of efforts to make myself and my circle, my community, more resilient and more caring in the face of challenges. So the idea of maintaining hope, because it gives us something positive to work towards, to look forward to, rather than just saying it's all over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other part I just want to highlight is that cultivating compassion for yourself as you're going through whatever the challenge is. I can't say enough how important that self-compassion is.
It is. It all starts with self-love. You know, that it all starts with that.
Yeah.
And I know for years I struggled with finding a reciprocal loving relationship with a man. And I realized that until I fully loved myself, I wasn't going to attract that love to me.
Right.
And it wasn't until I mean, this is one of my favorite stories. I was driving home from a therapy appointment, and I was saying to myself, for the first time in my life, I know exactly what I want in a relationship, and I know I deserve it. And I walked in the door of my house, and the phone was ringing, and it was my future husband calling me up and asking me on our first date.
The universe was listening to
Yeah.
what was happening in your consciousness. And I have a very similar experience to that. So, the other thing I want to highlight about what you've said, because, you know, we can go through these losses, and I think it's very common in our culture to ask, why me? Why did this happen to me? There's almost a shock, because in our Western culture, the death cycle, this, you know, the cycle of life, birth, death, and rebirth or resurrection, the death part is just not, it's just like ignored. We'll just ignore that. We'll just look away from that. So when we have a loss and a relationship dies, or a person we love dies, or a job that we love dies, we're not really equipped. And because we're not equipped, we tend to we go into a place of shame, like, I must have done something. Why did this happen? Like, we're looking to find someone, ourselves or someone else, to blame. And that question is just never going to produce a good result.
Yeah, one of the things I've been learning is, you know, our Western doctors, they operate on a medical model that's focused on preserving life at all costs, and that death is a failure.
Yes.
We, like somehow we failed if we're dying.
Right.
And and what I've noticed is, so my cancer came back in the form of a brain tumor in 2017. They said I would never be cancer free again. And then I went into remission. So I was part of the 5% that survived. So I was cancer free for a couple of years. And then it came back again 2 years ago. And so again, they said, well, you'll be in treatment for the rest of your life. And after a couple of months, the cancer went away. And they were like, well, we can't explain this, but it keeps rearing its little head up. So I realize now that, I do need to think of this as a chronic, lifelong illness that I will be dealing with. And so now I'm taking a preventative treatment to hopefully prevent it from coming back. But it means being part of the cancer machine. But what I've learned from my doctors is, when I first became diagnosed with cancer, I said to my doctor, I don't care what you do anything. I just want to live. And so now, after seeing how toxic some of these treatments are and the lasting side effects of them and how they can impair your quality of life, I'm not so sure that I'm going to as freely take that choice, make that choice. Because, and I read a book recently, and it was all about how our doctors, even if a treatment has a 2% chance of being effective, they'll throw it at you, even though they know the quality of your life will be unbearable. And that often people who chose to stop treatment had better endings to their life than the people who prolonged treatment too long. And so I'm at that point where I have to make those kinds of difficult choices and look at what is in my best interest in terms of the ongoing quality of my life. Like recently, my specialist, he wanted to throw this really toxic chemo at me. And he's like, we'll just, blow that sucker out of the water. And I'm like, wait a minute. What? But you're telling me it's going to come back. So why would I want to do that? Why would I want something so toxic? So I opted for the least toxic drug I could take, which is not a chemo. And I said, I'm going to start with this first and we'll see if it works. But you have to be, you have to be your own healing ally, your own advocate.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important, because if you take a passive stance and just go, oh, well, the doctors know what they're talking about, not only do you feel more powerless and reliant on the system, but you're missing opportunities to take care of yourself in a better way than they know how to do.
And I just want to highlight that you are educating yourself and you're making choices that are aligned with your values.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I want to just surface here is that, and I know this because I know you, you aren't afraid of death. You're not afraid to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I am curious whether or not you think that has any impact on your wellness. The fact that you've really kind of come into a relationship with death that maybe is more mature.
Well, it's kind of, this brings up a lot of thoughts for me. My husband studies Tibetan Buddhism a lot. And one of their focuses is that part of living is preparing for a good death. And that you need to be in a place of peace. So at any moment, if that's the moment you're going to die, that you will be in a peaceful place. and it will be good for your spiritual evolution. So they have a strong belief in that. And if you're scared or feel like, oh, this will be the ultimate failure or whatever, it's not going to help you. Right. So last year, my husband and I, we occasionally go to retreat centers, and we were staying at this Buddhist retreat center in Crestone, Colorado, and we spoke to the Rinpoche, the teacher, and we told him about my cancer diagnosis. And he looked at me and he just gave me such a penetrating look. And he said, you know, your aura is so clear, you don't have to ever worry about cancer again. And so he told me to do a special medicine Buddha chant every day. And he goes, and you never have to worry about cancer again. So my husband and I left, and for 2 minutes we were elated. We were like, oh, you know, we don't have to worry about cancer ever again. And then it sunk in, oh, he didn't say the cancer would be gone. He just said I didn't have to worry about it. And then I started thinking about that, and I thought, okay, well, if I only have such and so amount of time to live, do I want to spend that time worried? Or do I want to spend that time loving life and being at peace with whatever it is that happens? And, you know, I don't want to paint a picture that I'm never in despair about dying, because I don't believe most of us are capable of that. Yeah. But what I've learned is, so I give myself like despair times. So every 3 months I have to get a CAT scan. So of course there's some fear and despair and like, oh my God, what if it's grown? What if it's back? So I give myself full permission. Okay, you can wallow. You can be like, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And then we get the results. And then whatever those results are, you integrate them and go, okay, but the fact is right now I'm still alive. And for the next 3 months, I don't have to worry about anything, or because there's nothing new that I'm going to be learning. So for the next 3 months, I'm just going, you know, fine. So, but I think, you know, we're all going to have those moments, and it's really how you are in relationship to those moments. Like if you kind of do a guilt trip on yourself and go, oh, I'm supposed to be accepting of this. What's wrong with me that I'm having this despair and, you know, that I'm scared of dying. Well, you know, you need to compassionately embrace that part of you and go, this is just a scared little kid part of me that just wants comfort and just wants to know, you know, that it's going to be okay. So, I don't know, saying that everything's going to be okay made me think of, I was in a cancer support group with this wonderful, inspiring young woman who also had cervical cancer and eventually died. But she was an educator, and she wrote a book, a kid's book with her 8-year-old son on living life with mommy's cancer. And every page, you know, whatever the little kid is feeling, like he's feeling scared, and someone says to him, it's okay to feel scared and everything's going to be okay. And then the next page, it's okay to be happy that mom's cancer isn't here right now and everything's going to be okay. But every page ends with everything's going to be okay. And the first time I read that, I was like, well, but she died. So isn't that not okay? And then I thought, no, that sense of, you know, she gave her child the gift of going through cancer with her and being very transparent and encouraging him to express his feelings. And what an amazing gift.
Yeah.
So everything is going to be okay. And that's, you know, that's the hope. One of the things I've struggled with is leaving my husband. because my husband, uh, his mom attempted suicide when he was 6 years old, and then he never saw her again until he was an adult. And so, he felt very abandoned by that. And the thought of losing me was devastating to him. And then one day he and I had this epiphany that we just truly believed that we would always be together, on some soul level. And to just trust that feeling, that intuition. And I think it gave us both a great sense of peace.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. One of my teachers, Francis Weller, speaks about the worry and the anxiety and the fear that you were referring to. And he talks about how one of our jobs in the process of grieving is to sort of have our attention, to migrate our attention from this sort of less resourced, fearful part of ourselves to the healthy adult that can comfort, that can say,
Exactly.
here you are right now, worried and scared, and everything is going to be okay. And so we've got this adult part of ourselves that is, even if the locus of our attention is not on a mature acceptance of the life, birth, death, rebirth cycle, we've got a part of our attention that's in a place of acceptance, that recognizes death is a part of this cycle of life. We do have winter, and then we're going to have spring that follows.
Exactly.
So the idea that we can migrate enough of our attention to this more mature identity that can come in and just hold up and comfort the fear and the worry and the anxiety. And that book you described is so profound because, I mean, he learned as a child, yes, loss is going to come and it's going to be okay.
Yes, that we can survive loss. We have the resources to do that. This reminds me of another experience I had years ago. My husband and I went to a 3-day meditation retreat. So we were meditating, sitting and meditating all day long. And my back was killing me. It was so distracting. I couldn't think about anything else. Every time we had a break and there was a question and answer period with the teacher, other people would say, well, what do I do about the pain? I must be doing something wrong. How do I make it stop hurting? And the teacher would sit there and go, it hurts. And then someone else would be like, no, you don't understand. And I'm thinking, he doesn't understand my pain. This is like real pain. This isn't just like it hurts. This is horrible pain. And he would just sit there and go, yeah, it hurts. And so finally I started paying attention to the pain, because what I realized I'd been doing was trying to run away from the pain. Yeah. And it just kept following me and holding me tighter. And I started paying attention to it, and I realized, wow, this pain is like this colicky little baby that just can't get comfortable. It just, like, no matter what it does, it just feels terrible. And I thought, what would colicky little baby want? And I thought, she'd probably just want to be held and say, it's okay. I can't make it better, but I can sit here with you. And the minute I did that, which is exactly what you're talking about, the pain went away.
Wow.
And, and I think so often our suffering comes out of our struggle to make things different than they are.
Right. Not being able to sit with, when we try to run from something or we push something away, that's very different than when we sit with it in a place of saying, I see this is what is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rebecca, you have given us so many gems today. I'm so grateful. Before we close, is there anything you had like hoped we would get to or wanted to share that didn't get shared yet?
Well, that's a really good question. Uh, no, we've covered a lot, actually.
Wonderful.
Um, you know, I guess the one other thing I would say, in our culture, there's a tendency to talk about the battle with cancer or fighting cancer, which I find a very adversarial, it's like coming on with teeth clenched and your fists tight.
Right.
And I guess my strategy has been more to simply be curious about it. But, that works for me because I'm a very curious person anyway, and I love reading books. So I've read just a million books about cancer. And in some ways, it's a fascinating disease. And, the more I learn about it, the more I don't know, the less it's about the fear of the unknown. It's just like, okay, this is what it is. I mean, really, all it is a little clump of cells that are sitting in my chest right now,
Yeah.
working really hard to survive.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and how can I be curious about that, but also, um, like you can have a spider in your house and you don't want a spider in your house, but if you put it outside, it's fun to be curious about that.
Right. Right.
So that's kind of been my strategy is to not, to disperse anger,
Yeah.
because I always heard it said once that, anger is like giving it free rent in your head. So you're the one that suffers by your anger. And I think to be able to work through uh, to that, and just, once again, to me, it comes back to that sense of we're all going to die. We're all in this together. There are millions of people who have cancer and are going through the trials and tribulations I've had. I'm not alone in this.
Mm-mm.
So there's nothing to be angry about.
Yeah. Yeah. I too, I agree. I don't love the fighting terms at all. I think that being curious about it and then reducing the fear of the unknown, because if you're curious, you're going to learn about it. It's going to be known.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you can know. And then to come into right relationship with loss and recognize loss is part of the human condition. Death is part of the life cycle, the life, death, rebirth cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have a much different experience than if we feel like it's me against this thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, you have given us so many gems. I am so grateful for your wisdom with all of this.
Well, thank you.
And I feel like, we may not all be dealing with the same thing, but these ideas certainly can be used, I think, by all of us, because we all have challenge, we all have loss. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, take care.